If Tate was being brutally honest with himself, there was a small, private satisfaction in knowing the person who chose to sit beside him was the same person everyone else seemed unable to ignore. But the deeper truth was something he would never say out loud. Not to Noah, not to anyone. Tate had not become close to Noah because Noah was attractive. Not because he was beautiful or small or kind or soft-spoken in a way that made people instinctively trust him. Those things might have been obvious to everyone else, but they were not the reason Tate had stayed by his side for so many years. The real reason for Tate's focus on Noah was something stranger, something Tate himself barely understood. It was Noah's body, the simple physical reality of him. The way he existed beside Tate without asking for anything complicated in return. The way sharing space with him felt steady, calm, and uncomplicated. And if he was honest in the deepest part of his mind, there was something about Noah's body that he held in a kind of reverence. Not the way the adults around them looked at people, not with hunger or desire or anything crude like that. It was closer to admiration, almost like the way someone might admire a piece of art or a sculpture. Something whole and unspoiled that you didn't want to change or possess, only to leave exactly as it was. Tate respected that about Noah, the way he existed in the world without calculation. The way he carried kindness was like it was the most natural thing imaginable. The way his presence filled a room without him ever trying to command attention. It made Tate protective of him in ways he could never fully explain. And that was the secret he would never tell anyone, not the gossip people whispered about them, not the ridiculous assumptions others made about what happened when they were alone. The real truth was simpler and far more difficult to describe. Tate didn't want anything from Noah except Noah's body. He only wanted Noah to remain exactly as he was, sitting beside him, breathing beside him, sharing the same quiet space where nothing had to be defined and nothing had to change. Tate knew he could never explain it to Noah. If he ever said the words out loud, "I want your body near me," the meaning would be twisted immediately. Anyone who heard it would assume the same thing. They would think he meant sex, desire, possession, penetration. They would imagine something crude and physical. But that wasn't what he meant, not even close. Tate didn't want to sleep with Noah in the way people usually meant. He didn't want to turn their closeness into something sexual or romantic. The idea of that actually made his chest tighten with a kind of panic. What he wanted was much simpler. He liked Noah's physical presence. He liked being able to reach out and hug him, to sit beside him, to lean against him on a couch or rest his head on Noah's shoulder after a long day. He liked falling asleep knowing Noah was right there, breathing quietly in the same room. It was grounding, calming. The simple reality of Noah being nearby made something in Tate's mind settle into place. The world felt less hostile when Noah was there, but Tate understood something painful about the world they lived in. No adult would ever believe that explanation. People didn't understand physical closeness without attaching desire to it. If a grown man said he needed another person's body nearby to sleep, people would immediately assume there was something sexual hidden inside it. They would laugh or whisper or accuse. And the worst part was that if Tate tried to explain it to Noah, even Noah might misunderstand. Noah might become uncomfortable. He might start wondering if Tate expected something more from him, or worse, Noah might think he was supposed to respond in a way Tate never wanted. That possibility alone made Tate's stomach knot, because the truth was that Tate didn't want anything to change between them, not their quiet nights, not the easy way Noah leaned against him without thinking about it, not the peaceful silence of sharing space without needing explanations. If Noah suddenly believed there was supposed to be romance or desire involved, it would destroy the one thing Tate valued most, their simplicity, so Tate kept the truth locked away where it couldn't ruin anything. He would never tell Noah that his presence, his simple physical closeness, was the one thing in the world that made Tate feel calm, and he would definitely never say the words out loud, because the moment those words existed outside his own mind, the world would twist them into something ugly, something they had never been. Tate rubbed a hand over his face, exhausted by the same thought that kept circling his mind like a vulture. How the fuck do I explain this to him? Noah kept asking where their relationship started. Why did it exist? Why it looked the way it did, sleeping together every night, bodies close, but nothing that anyone else in the world would ever believe was innocent. And the answer, the real answer, Went back to Wayne, fucking Wayne. Tate hated even thinking of his name. The worst part was that Wayne hadn't even meant to ruin anything. Not really. Wayne hadn't planned anything. He hadn't been malicious in the way people imagine villains to be. Wayne had simply not cared. That apathy, that casual, careless indifference had been enough. One stupid night 14 years ago. One moment where Wayne had treated something serious like it was a joke, like nothing mattered, like nobody could get hurt, and Tate had snapped. The memory still burned under his skin when he thought about it. The anger, the panic, the sheer instinctive need to protect Noah when Wayne hadn't been paying attention, hadn't been taking things seriously, hadn't understood how quickly something harmless could become dangerous. Wayne's lack of behavior, that was the thing that had changed everything. Not what he did. What he didn't do. Tate's response had been explosive, immediate, final, and that moment followed him for the rest of his life. After that night, Tate stopped trusting people, stopped wanting friends, stopped believing anyone around Noah could be relied on to actually protect him if something went wrong. So Tate decided he would do it himself. That was the moment their relationship stopped being normal. It was the reason Noah never slept on the floor anymore. It was the reason Tate insisted Noah stay beside him. Why the habit had never stopped, even as they grew older, even as the world around them started whispering and making assumptions. No one understood it. No one believed it. Two boys sharing a bed for years and years without sex, without romance, without any of the things people insisted had to exist between two bodies that close. But Tate knew why it existed. And unfortunately, so did Wayne. That was the part that made Tate feel sick if he thought about it too long. Somewhere out there, Wayne was walking around knowing the truth Noah didn't know. Knowing exactly what had happened that night. Knowing why Tate had reacted the way he had. Knowing why Tate had looked him straight in the eye afterward and said the words that ensured Wayne had never spoken about it again. If you ever say a word about this to anyone, I'll kill you. Wayne had believed him. Wayne knew Tate well enough to understand it wasn't an empty threat. So Wayne kept his mouth shut for 11 years. Which meant Noah, the person at the center of everything, still had no idea. Noah slept beside him every night, trusting him completely, never realizing the strange shape of their relationship had been carved out by a moment he didn't even remember clearly. And Tate didn't know how to explain that without shattering something fragile between them, because the moment Noah learned the truth, he'd start asking a different question. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Tate didn't have an answer for that. Only the ugly truth he could never say out loud. Some secrets weren't kept protecting the past. They were kept because the present might not survive them. Tate knew with an almost cold certainty that the few people who had ever glimpsed the truth would never speak it aloud. Wayne was one of them, not because he feared Tate, not because he was intimidated or obedient, but because Wayne understood leverage. He understood how information could be weaponized, how the smallest hint of knowledge could be used to bend someone or something to your will. And Wayne was never one to waste an opportunity. He didn't want friends, not really. Tate had tried once as a child, had believed in the naive, fragile notion of friendship, and it had been a nightmare. A vivid, suffocating, humiliating nightmare. Betrayal, indifference, cruelty disguised as innocence. That was all he got from friends like Wayne, all he learned from trying to trust. After that, he swore he would rely on no one but himself. Noah, though, Noah was different. Noah didn't demand, didn't manipulate, didn't try to own or exploit. Whatever the hell Noah was, it was comforting, safe, predictable in a way that allowed Tate to breathe without thinking about agendas, betrayals, or unseen knives in the dark. Noah's presence was simple, grounding, a constant that didn't threaten or challenge, that didn't remind him of the chaos the world could unleash. Wayne, on the other hand, had been everything Tate didn't want or need in a person. Wayne was why Noah never slept on the floor, why Tate had the pleasure of Noah's body on the mattress and in his bed, and why every instinct Tate had screamed at him to guard the small, perfect boy who'd grown into something far more dangerous to others than he could ever be to Tate. Noah wasn't just a comfort. He was a tether, a quiet anchor in a world built on fear, manipulation, and grotesque obsession. And as much as Tate would never admit it to anyone, especially Noah, that tether was one of the few reasons he hadn't lost himself completely to the darkness he saw in every rich adult, every shadowed corner, every whispered conversation. Wayne had been a nightmare, but Noah was a lifeline. Every rich man had a secret. Some were small, silly, barely worth a shrug. Others were monstrous, disgusting, capable of toppling reputations, families, and entire empires if whispered in the wrong ear. And unfortunately for Tate, he knew exactly which of his secrets could do that. The one that, if exposed, would not just ruin him, it could burn everything to the ground. The problem wasn't the secret itself, it was learning who you could never, ever tell. Because the wrong person knowing even a fragment could destroy everything, and the right person would have to exist somewhere completely untrustworthy. That was why Tate's life was built on layers of armor and silence, on constant vigilance, on a precision of thought that left no room for mistakes. And that was also why his relationship with Noah worked so perfectly. Noah didn't know squat. He didn't see the scheming, the paranoia, the long shadows of power and corruption that stretched across Tate's life. He was blissfully oblivious, happy, enjoying the small, safe universe Tate allowed him to inhabit. He didn't have to understand the ugliness behind the polished walls, the greed and the cruelty that masked itself in cocktails and polite smiles. He didn't have to see the monsters Tate had battled or the ones Tate had become to protect him. Noah didn't have to think about that fucking cunt Wayne living somewhere, having the audacity to exist in comfort, making light of Tate Blue, of everything Tate had endured, of the way he'd had to navigate a world that had chewed up any notion of innocence long before Tate could even learn to breathe freely. Noah's life was untouched by that mess, and that was exactly the way Tate wanted it. Noah could just be Noah. And for once Tate didn't have to worry about the world crushing him, corrupting him, or teaching him what a dangerous, ugly place life could be for someone so small, so vulnerable, so impossibly perfect in the wrong kind of way. That was Tate's secret too, the fact that he couldn't let Noah see the truth because the truth would kill him in ways that no money, no privilege, and no threat could ever fix. All it took was one person. One sharp, clever mind who could see the threads, connect the patterns, and suddenly everything Tate had so carefully controlled would collapse. One word from Wayne, one careless slip from someone who knew the truth, and the resulting explosion, Chernobyl-level catastrophic, would devastate everything. The worst part, there was no way it could happen, no way it could be revealed without hurting Noah. He would be the first to shatter because only Tate knew the reasons, the history, the context, the danger behind everything. Tate understood that even a single memory of him in Noah's life, anything, could trigger the unraveling. Noah would care deeply. And if the truth ever came out, it wouldn't just hurt Noah, it could destroy him, because it went deeper than knowing. It would hit Noah in a way that would make him question everything he believed about his life, about love, about trust. The thing Noah held most precious in the world, the sense of safety, the quiet certainty of being understood and protected, was built on a lie. And the lie wasn't small, it wasn't harmless, it was the foundation of everything between them. If Noah ever realized that the relationship he cherished with Tate was constructed out of this careful deception, his world would collapse. He would see how much of everyone's life, his included, was built on similar lies, and the weight of that knowledge could crush him. And the terrifying truth, nobody had spoken up. They either didn't know fully or they did and had stayed silent because to reveal the truth would destroy lives. Some didn't say anything because knowing it was worse than any punishment anyone could deliver, worse than a gun pressed to your head. Everyone wondered what Noah meant to Tate. On the surface, it seemed simple, almost banal, but no one could figure it out, because Noah wasn't just a bed warmer, a companion, or a child to protect in a conventional sense. He was the living, breathing embodiment of the truth that Tate would spend his entire life hiding. He was proof of something so volatile, so dangerous that even Tate's own mother understood everything. Noah was the secret that could topple a carefully maintained empire of silence. A truth so potent that Tate's obsession with keeping him safe was inseparable from the very fabric of his own survival. And so Tate carried it. Every day, every moment, every glance, every calculated interaction was about keeping Noah intact, unknowing, untouched by the chaos that the world, or even a single word from someone who knew, could unleash. Noah's innocence, his oblivion, his trust, his very presence, that was the armor Tate would fight to maintain for as long as he lived. The moment Noah asked the words, "Why did our relationship start? What are we?" Tate felt a freeze in his chest that went deeper than fear, deeper than anything he had ever known. It wasn't just anxiety or unease, it was terror to his very core. Those questions weren't innocent. They threatened to tear open a hidden wound, one Tate had spent years burying beneath control and calculation. Adults had always made jokes about him and Noah, little quips at cocktail parties or sly whispers in school corridors. Most people laughed, assumed it was nothing, assumed it was a harmless friendship, but Tate never allowed it. He couldn't, not because he thought the jokes were wrong in a conventional sense, but because Noah being humiliated, even slightly, even in jest, was intolerable. Tate would bear that shame, Tate would manipulate, would control, would do anything to shield Noah, even if it meant sacrificing every shred of his own decency. Tate knew more than anyone how humiliating it was for Noah to be close to him. The world didn't understand the purity of their platonic proximity, the protective intensity, the irreverent worship of Noah's presence. It was humiliating on the surface, yes, other adults could see the closeness and twist it into rumors, jokes, and innuendos. But Tate could not allow that humiliation to harm Noah fully. He would bear it, he always had. And he was selfish, cruel even. If he had any sense of normal decency, he would have let Noah go years ago. Let him explore life, let him navigate relationships without the invisible chain Tate had wrapped around him for his protection. Let him be free from the suffocating shadow Tate represented. But Tate couldn't. Because he knew what would happen if he let Noah go. He knew the dangers, the cunning, cruel adults who would see Noah as a target. He had seen it. He had calculated it. And the thought of Noah facing it unguarded filled him with a terror so absolute that he could not breathe, could not allow it. So he kept Noah close, not because it was right, not because it was fair, but because the alternative, the thought of losing him to the world's cruelty, was a nightmare worse than the guilt, worse than the selfishness, worse than the constant pressure of his own obsessive protection. Tate would rather be hated, feared, misunderstood, or cruelly judged than allow Noah to face harm unshielded. Every second he spent near Noah was a calculation, a risk, a measure against the chaos he knew existed outside their fragile bubble. And every time Noah asked questions, every time he sought understanding, Tate's terror surged. Because understanding would mean peeling back the layers, revealing the dark machinery of his obsession, his protection, and his selfish cruelty. And Tate wasn't sure he could survive that revelation, not for himself, not for Noah. He had kept the truth buried for decades, and he would continue to do so, because keeping Noah safe even at the cost of everything else was all that mattered. Everything else could burn, Noah could not. Tate should have been a magician. He had pulled off the perfect magic trick and no one even noticed. The focus of everyone's attention and the point where all eyes were supposed to land was Noah and what Noah meant to Tate. Their unconventional, carefully constructed smokescreen relationship was the trick. It distracted, redirected, and concealed. As long as people's eyes were fully on Noah, watching him move, laugh, exist, they weren't noticing anything else. They weren't noticing Tate, they weren't noticing the cracks, the careful scaffolding, the hidden truths. What was Noah? What was his relationship to Tate? What did Tate think about him, and what dark, unspoken secrets bound them together? That was the invisible show, the hidden stage behind the bright spotlight. If anyone's gaze drifted away from Noah, even for a moment, the illusion could unravel. It could become dangerous, catastrophic. And Tate knew, buried deep in the recesses of his soul, that Noah would never forgive him if he ever discovered the full extent of the humiliation, the manipulation, the invisible control Tate had maintained for years. As long as everyone was looking at Noah, they had no reason, no need to notice anything else. They weren't seeing Tate. They weren't seeing the machinery behind the scenes. That was the brilliance, the perfection, the magic. A life lived in the shadows, protecting, containing, controlling, while the world stared blindly at the light, captivated by Noah. And Tate, he endured it all, invisible, unacknowledged, carrying the weight of every secret for as long as it took to keep Noah safe. That was the trick. That was the power, that was the truth no one would ever see. The smoke screen, the illusion, wasn't flawless. It was delicate, fragile, a threadbare magic act held together by careful timing and precision. As long as everyone's eyes were glued to Noah, watching what he was, what he represented, what he symbolized to Tate, everything ran smoothly. The world could see the golden boy, the charming, beautiful, kind, untouchable Noah, and Tate's presence remained invisible, irrelevant, harmless. People didn't notice the scaffolding, the hidden mechanisms, the way Tate bent and shaped everything around him to protect the illusion. But Tate's worst nightmare wasn't failure in the usual sense. It wasn't that someone would see the truth outright. It was far subtler, far more terrifying. His fear was the moment someone decided not to look at Noah at all. The moment a pair of sharp, clever eyes wandered away from the carefully constructed spotlight and focused on the wrong place, the wrong person, the wrong thing. One glance in the wrong direction, one misstep of attention, and the illusion could shatter. Everything hinged on their gaze. It was an unspoken law, a silent contract. Look at Noah, see only Noah, believe only what you are meant to believe. Tate had learned early that even the tiniest deviation, a suspicious glance, a whispered question, a knowing smirk could unravel years of careful work. And if it did, if anyone truly saw beyond the smoke and mirrors, the consequences wouldn't just ruin the illusion. They could destroy Noah, break him, taint everything Tate had fought to keep intact. It was a fear that lived in Tate's chest every day, that someone clever enough, sharp enough, would stop looking where they were supposed to, and in that single, fleeting moment, everything would collapse. That night Tate caressed Noah's hair. Tate swallowed his confessions and fears, he swallowed them all. Instead he muttered, "You trust Mark too easily." Noah stirred but didn't answer. Tate lay back down, turning onto his side this time, toward Noah, despite himself. He hovered there, torn between pulling Noah close like he always did and keeping his distance to punish a feeling he didn't understand. "I've been here first," Tate thought, panic creeping in around the edges of his anger. "I've always been here." And for the first time that certainty didn't feel like protection. It felt like something he might lose. Tate stared into the dark until his eyes burned, heart racing with a fear he would never admit out loud, not to Noah, not to himself. Because whatever this was, this jealousy, this dread, it wasn't something a straight buddy was supposed to feel. And that scared him more than Mark ever could. Tate lay there staring at the ceiling, jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Mark's voice echoed in his head, not the words themselves but the intent behind them. The way he'd said Noah's name, like he already knew what he wanted, Like he was entitled to Noah's time, his attention, his body. That was what made Tate furious. Not romance, not love, possession. Tate's mind filled in the blanks anyway against his will. He imagined Mark's hands where they didn't belong. Mark is leaning too close to Noah's body. Mark convinces Noah that sex was normal with older men, that it was fine, that it didn't mean anything. That this was just how things went when someone older and more confident decided they wanted you. Tate's stomach twisted. Noah was too trusting, always had been. He let people get close without asking what they wanted in return. Tate had spent years stepping in, steering things away from danger before Noah even noticed it was there, and now Mark was circling. He doesn't get to touch you, Tate thought, anger flaring hot and irrational. He doesn't get to decide anything about you. It wasn't about attraction, Tate knew that. He didn't want Noah like that, he never had. The idea of it made him uncomfortable, defensive, and angry in a way he couldn't fully explain. What he wanted was to protect what was his childhood companion, his constant, his safe place. The thought of Mark being alone with Noah, talking softly, pushing limits, crossing lines Noah might not even recognize, made Tate's chest feel tight, like he couldn't get enough air. He turned his head and looked at Noah sleeping beside him, unaware, open, vulnerable in the way Tate had always hated most. "You don't know what people want from you," Tate whispered under his breath, not caring if it was unfair. "You never have." His hand curled into a fist against the sheets. If Mark thought he could just show up and take something from Tate's life, something Tate had guarded for years, he was wrong. Dead wrong. Tate didn't want Noah romantically. But the idea of someone else touching him, claiming him, changing the balance of them, that felt like theft, and Tate had never been good at letting things be taken from him. Tate, his voice laced with concern, addressed Noah. "Noah, you can't let Mark do that to you. He's not a good guy, he's not your friend." Noah, his face flushing with embarrassment, shook his head. "Tate, it's not like that. Mark's just a friend, he cares about me." Tate's expression darkened, his voice firm. "No, Noah, Mark doesn't care about you, not in the way you think. He wants more. I've seen the way he looks at you, the way he stares at your body. He's not satisfied with just being your friend." Noah's eyes widened, surprise and denial warring in his expression. "Tate, you're wrong. Mark he wouldn't do that. He's not like that." Tate's voice softened, but his resolve remained firm. "Noah, I wish I were wrong. I wish Mark were just your friend. But I've seen the way he looks at you, the way he licks his lips when he thinks you're not looking. He's not satisfied with just being your friend, Noah. He wants more, and he won't stop until he gets it." Noah's face paled, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. But he's never done anything, never said anything. He's always been so respectful." Tate sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Noah, sometimes people hide their true intentions, their true desires. Sometimes they wait, they bide their time, they manipulate, they lie. Mark is not your friend, Noah. He's a predator, and he's waiting for the right moment to pounce. He wants to bend you over any surface and treat you like a girl." They both fell asleep for a few hours while everything was still and dark outside. The room was dark, filled with the soft, even sound of Noah's breathing. Tate was on his back, staring up at the ceiling, unable to sleep. He had been tossing and turning for hours, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts he couldn't seem to quiet. Suddenly he heard it, a soft, rhythmic sound, a moan. He turned his head, looking at Noah, who was on his back beside him. Noah's eyes were closed, his brow furrowed in concentration. His hips were moving, a slow, steady rhythm, his hands fisted in the sheets. "What the?" Scene retracted, see extended version on Wattpad. Tate stared wide-eyed and speechless. As Noah slowly came back to himself, his eyes fluttered open, his brow furrowed in confusion. He looked around the room, his gaze landing on Tate, who was still sitting up, staring at him. Tate couldn't stop looking at Noah, who acted in ways he'd never seen before today. It intrigued him but also made him very uncomfortable. "Tate," Noah's voice was groggy, sleep thickened. What's going on?" Tate opened his mouth, then closed it again, at a loss for words. He had just watched Noah have a sex dream, a vivid, vocal, graphic adult dream. "Tate," Noah's voice was more urgent now, his expression turning worried. Did I do something?" Tate hesitated, then nodded slowly. You had a dream, a sex dream." Noah's eyes widened, his face flushing a deep, embarrassed red. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Tate. I didn't mean to. I didn't even know I could. Fuck." He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Tate felt a pang of sympathy. He reached out, putting a tentative hand on Noah's shoulder. "Hey, it's okay, it's just a dream, it doesn't mean anything." Noah looked up, his eyes filled with mortification. "It doesn't mean anything, Tate, I just said things, did things in front of you." Tate hesitated, then admitted, "Yeah, you did, but it was a dream, you weren't, aware." Noah groaned, dropping back onto the bed. "Oh God, this is so embarrassing, I can't even, really?" He shook his head, his face still flushed. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on Noah. "Hey, it's really not a big deal, it's a little weird, sure, but it's not like you meant to do it, it was just a dream." Noah finally looked at him, his expression still embarrassed but also grateful. "Thanks, Tate, I really appreciate you being so cool about this." Tate smiled, squeezing Noah's shoulder. "That's what I'm here for, right?" Noah smiled back, a genuine, relieved smile. "Yeah, that's what they're for." As they lay back down side by side, Tate couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He had just watched Noah have a vivid, vocal, graphic sex dream about another girl, and he had no clue which girl Noah was thinking about, and for some reason that made him feel sad. Tate stayed behind. Noah's dream lingered in Tate's mind long after Noah had awakened. It unsettled him in a way he couldn't easily explain. Tate had never been comfortable thinking of Noah as a sexual person. Whenever he looked at him, he saw the qualities that had first drawn him in: his kindness, his innocence, his quiet joy, and the gentle way he moved through the world. Those were the things Tate cherished most about him. The thought of Noah being consumed by lust or chasing fleeting encounters like so many of the men Tate had known felt completely foreign. Tate had watched countless friends treat sex as little more than entertainment, collecting partners without forming meaningful attachments. He had never wanted that life for Noah. In Tate's mind, Noah deserved something gentler. He wanted Noah to remain someone who loved deeply rather than casually, someone who valued tenderness over desire and intimacy over conquest. The dream had forced Tate to acknowledge a side of Noah he had spent years trying not to imagine, and that realization left him deeply uncomfortable. It wasn't that Tate believed there was anything wrong with sexuality. What disturbed him was the collision between the Noah he carried in his heart and the reminder that Noah, like anyone else, had private desires and inner thoughts Tate could never fully know. For reasons he struggled to articulate, Tate preferred to think of Noah simply as Noah, kind, compassionate, endlessly sincere, and untouched by the cynicism that seemed to harden everyone else. Seeing him any other way left Tate with a quiet, persistent ache he couldn't shake. Tate's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Every time Mark's name flashed on Noah's phone or the guy lingered too close after class, the same fire lit under Tate's skin. Now Mark was here in person, bold enough to show up near the dorms like he had any right to Noah's space. Tate didn't call out, he simply followed, boots striking pavement with heavy steps. Mark turned the corner by the family housing row and Tate's vision narrowed to a tunnel. The guy had already tried texting, calling, and offering to cover tuition, which bought him pieces of Noah's life. Tate hated every second of it. The thought of Mark getting anywhere near Noah made his fists curl. Later that night, the scene played out in his mind as a clear hypothetical. Tate pictured himself walking back from class, key turning in the lock. Scene retracted, see extended version on Wattpad. In the same imagined moment, Tate stepped inside. The door slammed. Mark barely lifted his head before Tate grabbed him by the throat and yanked him off Noah. Mark's body hit the floor with a heavy thud. Tate drove a knee into Mark's ribs, then smashed his fist into Mark's face once, twice, blood spraying across the carpet. Mark wheezed and tried to crawl, but Tate hauled him up by the hair and slammed him against the wall. "You think you can touch him? Pay for him, make him do that shit." Tate's voice came out low and vicious. He drove an elbow into Mark's gut, then kicked his legs out so Mark dropped again. Every punch landed with a wet impact, nose breaking, lip splitting, Mark's naked body curling as Tate kept swinging until Mark stopped moving. The fantasy shifted. Tate saw himself coming home to Mark already on top of Noah, telling Noah he owed him for the tuition checks. Tate burst in, ripped Mark off, and slammed him into the dresser. Fists flew, jaw cracking, eye swelling shut, Mark's body jerking with every hit. Tate pinned him down with a knee on his chest and growled that Noah's body, Noah's attention, Noah's everything stayed under Tate's watch. No one else got to claim it. Mark would beg, but Tate wouldn't stop until Mark lay bloody and barely conscious on the floor, promising never to look at Noah again. Tate sat up in the dark, breathing hard. The jealousy burned hotter than ever. Mark calling, showing up near the dorm, offering money, all of it pointed to the same thing, Mark trying to wedge in and take what Tate protected. The imagined scene replayed in pieces, Mark's body on Noah, forcing Noah's mouth open, Noah looking cornered. Tate's hands itched to repeat the violence. He would choke Mark out if he had to, beat him senseless, make sure the message stuck. No one touched Noah. No one bought pieces of his life. Tate would do whatever it took, crime of passion or not, to keep Mark away for good. Morning light crept through the blinds. Tate's mind stayed locked on the scenario, catching Mark in the act, dragging him off Noah, fists connecting again and again until Mark understood. The homewrecker, the thief of attention, the guy who dared push into Noah's space, he would regret it the second Tate got his hands on him. Tate would make sure Mark never sniffed around again, never called, never offered money, never laid a finger on what Tate considered his to guard. The rage settled into something cold and ready. If Mark ever crossed that line, the hypothetical would become reality in seconds. The next evening, the dorm room felt too quiet without Noah's presence, like the walls were listening and shrinking in size, making him feel claustrophobic. Tate sat on his bed, elbows braced on his knees, staring at the door Noah had closed behind him hours earlier before his dinner with Mark. He checked the clock. Again, every minute dragged. Each tick made his irritation sharper, heavier, like something pressing against his ribs from the inside. He told himself again that he wasn't jealous, that this wasn't about wanting Noah because it wasn't. He didn't want him like that, that wasn't the problem was Mark. Tate didn't like Mark, didn't trust him. Something about the way he talked, the way he lingered, the way he always seemed to be looking at Noah like he was something fragile or breakable or worse, something he could take. Tate clenched his jaw, he didn't even know where Noah was. Just that he'd gone to meet someone after Mark had called. That omission burned. Noah never used to leave things out. Tate stood and paced the narrow room, hands fisting at his sides. He tried to reason with himself. Noah was an adult. Noah could make his own decisions, whatever Mark was, or Noah wasn't stupid. So why did Tate feel like he was being edged out of something he couldn't name? He stopped by the window and looked down at the campus lights glowing against the dark. College was supposed to mean independence, growth, separation. Instead, it felt like a loss. His mobile phone rang on the desk, nothing important. He ignored it, then grabbed it again a second later, restless. His thumb hovered before he could stop himself. Tina. An athletic hot girl, answered on the third ring. Tate, she said, surprised but pleased. Hey, he replied, voice rougher than he intended. You busy? A beat, not really. Come over, he said, not asking, not explaining, just needing the room to stop feeling empty. She hesitated only briefly. Okay. When he hung up, Tate sat back down hard on the bed. This was normal, this was easy, this was what he understood. Jealousy was an emotion Tate had never understood growing up. He had seen it in other people, the envious glances, the possessiveness, the bitterness that surfaced whenever someone felt replaced, but he had never experienced it himself. It had always seemed irrational, even childish, as though secure people simply outgrew it. Then Noah entered his life. The emotion arrived so quietly that Tate couldn't remember the exact moment it began. By the time he was 8 years old, however, he knew the feeling by heart. It announced itself as a crushing weight beneath his ribs whenever Noah's attention drifted elsewhere. If another friend made Noah laugh, Tate felt it. If Noah accepted an invitation that didn't include him, Tate felt it. If someone else became the center of Noah's day, the pressure in Tate's chest became almost unbearable. It wasn't anger at Noah. It was the terrifying fear of losing the person who mattered most. That was why Noah's dinner with Mark felt less like an ordinary evening and more like a betrayal. No one, not Noah, not his family, not a single person, truly understood how deeply Tate distrusted Mark. The mere mention of his name tightened every muscle in Tate's body, yet Noah had gone to dinner with him anyway. Sometimes Tate couldn't help wondering if Noah leaned into his friendship with Mark as a quiet act of independence, a subtle way of reminding Tate that his life belonged to him alone, that he could accept invitations, make decisions, and spend time with whomever he pleased without asking permission. The thought stung more than Tate cared to admit. As the days passed since 1976, the jealousy only deepened. He found himself wanting to avoid Noah altogether because every reminder of Mark reopened the wound, yet staying away only made the ache worse. What haunted Tate most was a single thought he couldn't silence. What if part of Noah's heart belonged to Mark? The possibility settled over him like a storm cloud. Tate couldn't bear the idea that someone else occupied a place inside Noah that he could never reach. And if that were true, if Mark had somehow become more important than Tate, then Mark had better hope their paths never crossed. Because Tate no longer trusted himself to react with the restraint everyone expected of him. The thought of that man interfering in what Tate treasured most awakened an anger so fierce that it frightened even him. When Tina arrived, she filled the space quickly, noise, movement, warmth. Tate focused on that instead of the clock, instead of the unanswered questions circling his head. He didn't think about Noah while she was there, or at least he didn't let himself. But even after the door closed again, even after the dorm went quiet once more, Tate found himself checking the time. Still waiting, still angry, still not knowing why it mattered this much. Tate shoved the sophomore girl on Noah's bed, the mattress the boys shared each night, and kissed her. Scene retracted, see extended version on Wattpad. Tate was angry, jealous, and irritated that Mark lured away Noah. Tate wanted Noah's time and attention, but this interloper took Noah's time. They used to do everything together, but now Noah wanted friends and older guy buddies, which made an insecure Tate angry. Tate hadn't experienced intense jealousy like this before Noah entered his life. Tate believed that Noah couldn't have a better time or more fun unless it came with Tate's presence. Noah was the one thing in his life that was pure and loyal to him, and Mark stole those moments from Tate. Mark would be punched if he ever saw that bastard again. Over time, that anger stopped feeling like a passing storm and settled into something colder, sharper. Tate began to understand that it wasn't just jealousy clawing at him, but something closer to fear. Noah had not simply drifted away. He had chosen a safer place to stand, somewhere Tate could not follow. Every quiet laugh Noah shared with Mark, every ease in his voice that Tate no longer heard directed at himself, felt like proof that the distance was permanent. Tate could imagine 100 ways to break Mark, but none that would rebuild what had already been lost between Noah and Tate. Tate knew Noah's love for him had cooled. The realization did not come all at once, but in quiet moments that left no room for denial. It settled into his chest with a crushing weight, and for the first time it broke through his anger. Tate cried, silently at first, his face turned away, shoulders tense as if he could hold it back through sheer force. But the grief would not stay contained. It came harder, raw, and unguarded, until even he could not pretend it was anything but heartbreak. What unsettled him most was how little Noah seemed to notice. Or worse, how much he noticed and chose not to acknowledge. Noah no longer reached for him without thinking, no longer looked at him as if he were the center of something unshakable. There was a deliberateness now, a care in every interaction, as though Noah weighed each word before offering it. Tate found himself studying those pauses, those careful expressions, searching for any sign that the old Noah was still there, buried beneath the walls. But the more he searched, the more he realized those walls were not fragile, they were reinforced, intentional, and meant to keep him out. And still, Tate could not let go. Even as resentment coiled tighter inside him, even as violent thoughts about Mark flickered through his mind like reflex, there remained a stubborn, aching certainty that Noah belonged to him in a way that could not simply be replaced. That certainty warred with the reality in front of him, tearing at whatever control he had left. Because no matter how fiercely he imagined tearing Mark apart, it would not change the truth. Noah had already stepped beyond his reach, and Tate had no idea how to pull him back without destroying what little remained between them. Tate loved Noah. It was not simple affection or casual regard, no. It was something older, deeper, rooted so far back in him it felt inseparable from who he was. Noah was his in the same unquestioned way a child clings to a favorite toy, something worn soft by time and constant touch. Tate loved him the way he had loved that little truck he carried everywhere as a boy, possessive, unquestioning, certain it would always be there. When Tate was 5, at school, a boy had tried to play with Noah during recess, drifting into their space as if he belonged there. Tate remembered the sharp, immediate flare of rejection that followed. Without hesitation, he had shoved the boy away, small hands firm, voice insistent as he told him there was no room. Noah had laughed bright and easy as if it were all a game, and the boy had retreated without protest. To Noah it had meant nothing. To Tate it had meant everything. Even then, there had been no room for anyone else. And now, years later, faced with the reality that Noah could choose someone else, that he could step beyond that invisible boundary Tate had drawn so long ago, it felt like something fundamental was being torn apart. Tate wasn't thinking carefully. Having Tina over was a mistake. The idea had come to him in a flash, reckless, bright, and cruel in a way he didn't fully examine. He told himself it didn't matter, that nothing mattered anymore, that if Noah could drift away, then he could fill the space however he wanted. But beneath that was something sharper, more desperate, a thought he didn't want to name. There was a twisted kind of satisfaction in imagining Noah walking back in, seeing Tina there, seeing Tate with someone else. Not even for the act itself, but for the reaction, for the flicker of hurt, of jealousy, of anything that proved Noah still cared. It wasn't about Tina at all. It was about forcing a crack in that wall Noah had built, even if the only way to do it was by breaking something further between them. Tate, his heart pounding with guilt and shame, froze as he heard the door to Noah's dorm room creak open. He turned, his eyes widening as he saw Noah standing in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes filled with shock and betrayal. Tate hadn't wanted Noah to go out in the first place, certainly not to some restaurant with Mark, a boy Tate had immediately recognized as a threat in the peculiar, twisted ways only he could see. Mark was charming, attentive, and most dangerously gay. Tate knew exactly how Mark could influence Noah. How easily Noah's naivety and kindness could be exploited. So, Tate did what he convinced himself was necessary. He had brought the girl back to the dorm, deliberately timing it so that their encounter coincided with Noah's most likely return. It was cruel, yes, calculated, but in Tate's mind, it was a form of protection and punishment rolled into one. Protection because by forcing Noah to witness Tate's autonomy, his power, and the reality that Noah couldn't control Tate, he hoped to teach a lesson about boundaries, about the dangers of trusting too easily, about the chaos of letting the wrong people into their orbit. Punishment because Noah's impulsive trip to dinner with Mark had been an act of defiance, a subtle challenge to Tate's carefully maintained order. Tate watched from the shadows of their shared dorm, heart-pounding, mind-taut, calculating every potential reaction. He told himself it was necessary. Noah didn't know the reasons, no. The cruelty of the act, the timing, the theatricality of it, it was all a message wrapped in the guise of something else. And when Noah finally came in, seeing what Tate had staged, everything Tate had feared flashed through his mind: anger, hurt, confusion, betrayal. But it wasn't about punishment for Tate, it was about control, about teaching Noah that the world was dangerous, that people like Mark could appear charming, even harmless, but they carried the potential to wound. And more than anything, Tate wanted Noah to understand, without ever admitting it aloud, that the world would never protect him, but Tate could, or would, if Noah let him. It was a twisted calculus of love, control, and fear. And in that moment, Tate knew he had crossed a line, but he also knew he couldn't stop himself. He couldn't let Noah out of his sphere, not entirely, not ever. Because the moment Noah truly stepped away, the moment he trusted the wrong person or followed the wrong path, Tate's entire world and Noah's could unravel. Noah returned from dinner with Mark while he worked up the courage to apologize to Tate about hurting his feelings. I opened my dorm door expecting Tate's scowl, not his bare body behind a girl. Noah saw Tate screwing a girl on their bed, which hurt even more than his birthday surprise. "Tate, what are you doing?" I stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. His eyes darted to Tina, to my bed, to the scene unfolding before him. Tate felt a surge of nausea, of panic, as he realized what Noah was seeing, what he was thinking. "Noah, it's not what it looks like," he started, his voice filled with desperation. But Noah knew I did it to get back at him for eating dinner with Mark. Noah was already turning away, already storming out of the room, already leaving him behind. Tate felt a pang of guilt, of regret, as he watched Noah go. He knew he had hurt him, had betrayed him, violated their rules, had shattered the trust between them. And he knew, too, that it was all his fault. He had done this, had brought this on himself, had let his anger, his jealousy, his desire for revenge consume him. He looked at Tina, at her bare body, at the scene they had made, and he felt a wave of disgust, of shame. He had used her to get back at Noah, to hurt him, to make him feel the way he had made Tate feel. And now, he had hurt Noah, had hurt his childhood companion, had shattered the bond between them. He felt a surge of anger, of self-loathing, as he realized what he had done. He had let his emotions control him, had let his jealousy, his anger, his desire for revenge consume him. He had let it cloud his judgment, he had let it make him do something he would never forgive himself for. He got dressed quickly, his hands shaking, his heart pounding. He had to find Noah, had to talk to him, had to explain, to apologize, to make things right. He had to fix this, had to fix what he had broken, had to fix what he had shattered. Tate froze in the hallway, heart hammering, as the scene unfolded in slow, brutal clarity. Noah's small frame pressed against Mark's, seeking something: comfort, protection, maybe even explanation, and Tate felt the full weight of what he had done. Every calculated move, every twisted form of lesson he'd imposed, now burned in his chest as he watched the boy he had sworn to protect lean into someone else. Mark's arms were steady, holding Noah as he buried his face in the older boy's chest, and Tate's stomach twisted. The betrayal wasn't just about the girl, the timing, the punishment, it was about trust, the fragile trust that had taken years to build. Noah didn't just see Tate's actions, he felt them: every ounce of cruelty, every shadow of control, every unspoken fear Tate had tried to shield him from. Tate's hands tightened into fists at his sides. He wanted to scream, to intervene, to fix it all somehow, but he knew any move now would only make it worse. The hallway felt impossibly long, the space between them a chasm Tate couldn't cross without breaking Noah further. And yet he couldn't look away. He had orchestrated this moment and he was powerless to stop the consequences. Noah's chest rose and fell against Mark's in silent sobs, and Tate felt a pang of helplessness so sharp it stole his breath. He had taught Noah to rely on him to find safety in his presence, but here at this exact moment Noah had found solace elsewhere. The realization struck Tate harder than anything. Before today he could protect him, guide him, tether him, but he couldn't control the heart, the choices, the instinct to seek comfort where it seemed safest. And as he stood there, frozen in the hallway, Tate understood something he had never admitted to himself. This wasn't just about control or protection anymore. He had underestimated the complexity of Noah's needs, the depth of his feelings, and the fact that even someone as loyal, obsessive, and meticulous as Tate couldn't be everything. He could never replace what Noah found in the arms of another, and the truth, the terrifying, shattering truth, was that he had hurt the one person he had spent years trying to protect. The hallway felt suffocating, the air thick with the unspoken. Tate wanted to retreat, to disappear, to erase the moment entirely. But he also knew he couldn't. All he could do was watch silently as Noah clung to Mark, a vivid reminder that his own obsession, his protective mania, had limits. And in that instant Tate realized that no matter how carefully he orchestrated the world around them, some things, trust, heart, innocence, could never be perfectly controlled. And as he stood there, as he watched Noah walk away, as he watched him leave him behind, he knew that he had lost him. He had lost his closest person, he had lost the person he cared about most in the world. And he knew, too, that he had only himself to blame. Tate waited. Midnight came and went, the red numbers on the clock bleeding into one another until time felt meaningless. The dorm room stayed dark except for the glow from the window, campus lights reflecting faintly off the walls Noah had claimed as his own. Tate lay back on his bed with his hands folded over his chest, staring at the ceiling. Noah was never this late. He told himself again, this doesn't matter. Noah was allowed to disappear for a night. They weren't kids anymore, they weren't joined at the hip. College meant separate lives. Still, every sound in the hallway made Tate sit up. Every laugh, every door opening, every set of footsteps that passed without stopping tightened something ugly in his chest. By 2 a.m. the anger replaced the worry. Fine, Tate thought, stay gone. He rolled onto his side, facing the empty bed across from him, its sheets untouched. Noah's pillow still smelled like his shampoo. Tate shoved his face into his own pillow and shut his eyes hard, jaw clenched. He didn't sleep. Across town, Noah sat curled in Mark's lap on the edge of a hotel bed, shaking. His face was buried against Mark's shoulder, tears soaking into the fabric of his shirt. His whole body felt hollowed out, like something vital had been ripped free and left him echoing. "How could he do that to me?" I sobbed, the words tearing out of my chest. How could he? Mark's grip tightened slightly, a silent reassurance that I wasn't falling apart alone. His voice was low, calm, steady, everything I wasn't. "I know," he said softly, letting each word hang between us. "I know he hurt you, and it wasn't fair. None of this is your fault, Noah, not a bit." I buried my face further, the heat of my tears soaking his shirt, my sobs rattling my chest. I trusted him to be," my voice faltered, choked on something I didn't even want to name. "I trusted him to not, I couldn't finish, the weight of betrayal pinning my throat shut. Mark didn't push me, he just kept me pressed against him, rocking slowly, letting me collapse into the storm I couldn't contain. "You're not alone," he murmured. "You're safe right now, I've got you." I could feel the anger coiling under my skin, hot and sharp. But he ruined it, he ruined everything. Why would he even? My words died on the edge of reason. I wanted someone to blame, to point at and yell at. Tate's name burned in my mind like a brand. Mark stayed quiet, just holding me, letting the silence carry the weight of everything. And somehow that stillness, his steadiness, was the only thing keeping me tethered. Even as my chest heaved with the mixture of grief, anger, and confusion, I realized something terrifying. For the first time in a long while, I had no one else to blame but the mess we had all been caught in. And I didn't even know how to feel about that. "Breathe, Noah," Mark said finally, almost a whisper guiding my shaking body. "One breath at a time, we'll get through this, you're not alone." And as I clung to him, the hollow ache in my chest mixed with something that felt like fragile relief. I wasn't entirely abandoned, not yet. Mark had taken on the role of mentor, footing the bill for Noah's first year because he saw potential in the kid, and yeah, because he liked him. Liked the way Noah's eyes lit up when they talked late into the night about hidden bars in Providence or the latest whispers from the gay underground. Noah knew that Tate thought he had stopped Mark from controlling Noah through financial assistance. What Tate didn't know was that he was already too late. 3 days before Tate had called Brown University and instructed the bursar's office not to accept any future payments from Mark, Noah had already deposited Mark's check with the university. The payment had cleared. Mark's tuition payment for Noah's first year had already been accepted and credited to Noah's account before Tate ever picked up the phone. Believing he had stopped the transaction in time, Tate mailed his own tuition check to Brown, convinced he had corrected the situation before any real damage had been done. He couldn't have known the university would return it unopened. Since Noah's account had already been paid in full, Tate's check was no longer needed. The bursar's office processed the return and mailed both the uncashed check and a receipt explaining that the account had already been satisfied. The envelope was already on its way to the Blue Mansion. Tate hadn't seen it yet because the man had left California 1 week before the check arrived at Talia's house. He still believed his payment was the one that would secure Noah's education. He had no idea that on paper Mark, not Tate, had become the man paying for Noah's first year at Brown. And when that envelope finally arrived, it would shatter the illusion that Tate had prevented the one thing he had been desperate to stop. Noah burst through the dorm door earlier that evening, tears streaming down his face, his slim frame shaking. Tate, his roommate and secret crush, had just been with some girl right there on Noah's bed while Noah pretended to endure Tate's control. The moans, the creaking mattress, it had gutted him. Now Noah straddled Mark's lap, his hands clutching Mark's shirt, sobbing into his shoulder. "Fuck me, Mark," Noah begged, his voice raw and broken. "Please, I need this." Mark's arms wrapped around him instinctively, holding him close. Noah was so young, so inexperienced, barely out of high school, navigating college and his feelings for Tate all at once. Mark's heart ached seeing him like this. Mark was uncomfortable that Noah wanted sex after Tate had crushed the blonde's heart yet again. "You're upset," he said softly, rubbing Noah's back. "This isn't the right time. We can talk or I can get you some water." "I want somebody to genuinely care about me right now," Noah cut in, pulling back to meet Mark's eyes. His cheeks were flushed, tears glistening. "I want you to fuck me. I've never done it before. I want someone who cares about me to do it." Mark hesitated, his mind racing. He did care more than he let on, but Noah was vulnerable, reeling from Tate's casual cruelty. "Noah, listen, I'm not going to take advantage. You've been hurt enough today. Tate's an idiot, but we should wait." Noah shook his head, determination flashing through the pain. His fingers trembled as they moved to Mark's belt, unbuckling it with clumsy urgency. "No, I need you now." He yanked the zipper down, shoving Mark's jeans and boxers. "Noah, stop," Mark said, his voice firm but gentle, reaching for Noah's wrists. Scene retracted, see extended version on Wattpad. They stilled, Noah collapsing forward onto Mark's chest, both panting. Mark held him tight, arms secure, murmuring soft words. "Oh my God, you all right?" "Yeah, I'm fine," Noah panted. "That was amazing." "Thank you," Noah hugged Mark. I pressed closer to Mark, letting the warmth of his presence anchor me even as the sting of disappointment and longing throbbed through every part of me. I thought my first time would be with Tate," I admitted, my voice muffled against his shoulder, the words trembling and fragile. "But it's pretty clear he'll never love me the way I need him, not the way I need someone to." Mark's hand cupped the back of my head, his thumb brushing gently against my hair, steady and grounding. He leaned down, pressing a soft, almost reverent kiss to my cheek, the kind of touch that felt like it carried an apology without words. "I'm sorry, kid," he murmured. There was no mockery, no judgment, just a quiet, unflinching understanding. Somehow, that tiny acknowledgement of my pain made it less sharp, a little more bearable. I swallowed hard, tears still damp on my skin. "It's not your fault nor Tate's," Mark whispered, even though a part of me felt guilty for leaning on him, for letting someone else shoulder the pieces Tate had shattered. I don't even know how to feel. Everything's spinning." "You don't have to know yet," Mark said, rocking me gently, his touch deliberate and careful. You just have to feel it all, the hurt, the anger, the loss. Don't shove it away, I've got you. I let out a shaky, trembling breath, clinging to him as if by holding on I could hold the world together too. Somewhere deep in the pit of my chest, I realized something I didn't want to admit aloud. Tate might never give me what I needed, might never be capable of giving me what I craved, but Mark at least was here, present, real. And that, despite everything, felt like the smallest, most fragile thread of safety in a world that had proven, over and over, just how unsafe it could be. I pressed my face into his chest, breathing in the scent of him, the solid, grounding warmth of his body beneath my cheek. It was unlike Tate, unlike the cold, consuming intensity that had defined so much of my life with him. This was gentleness. This was patience. This was a shield against the chaos swirling around me. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt a tiny glimmer that I could survive this heartbreak without falling apart completely. Noah started to cry, agonizingly, like something inside him had finally torn straight down the middle. The loss wasn't quiet or distant anymore. It was sharp, suffocating, choking him with every broken breath. His heart felt like it had split in half and there was no way to hold it together. He knew Tate would never love him back, and the truth of it burned through him. No, he had known since Tate's 18th birthday. His heart had accepted it back then, had tried to be rational to protect him. But today his mind and resolve finally caught up, finally understood. Tate was too broken or too straight to love anybody, especially a man like Noah, and the hope that he might someday come around, that fragile, romantic, childlike belief, wasn't just unrealistic, it was gone. Noah couldn't pretend anymore. He had always known it would never happen. He had never let himself feel it, until now, and it hurt more than anything he had ever known. Mark sighed, the sound heavy with a kind of tired certainty. Tate's an asshole, he said, blunt but not careless. He's broken, and broken people hurt people as he hurt you today. His voice softened slightly, but the truth in it didn't. Nobody who respects you, nobody who actually cares about you would do something like that, not to you. Noah's shoulders shook, but he stayed silent, listening. Stay away from him, Noah, Mark continued, more firmly now. He'll only hurt you again. There was a brief pause before Mark went on, quieter but more deliberate. He's using you, you know that, right? Tate needs your body to sleep, that's it, and he doesn't care about anything beyond that, not the way you do. Noah squeezed his eyes shut, tears slipping down his face as the words sank in. If Tate really loved you platonically, he would have let you go immediately or pushed you to pursue others once you started liking other people, Mark said. He wouldn't keep you this close if it were tearing you apart. That's not love, that's dependency. The word lingered, heavy and unavoidable. Tate doesn't know about me being gay or my romantic feelings. I lied to him saying I was straight. Mark was shocked at Noah's confession. Jesus, tell Tate so you move on or hide it and leave the boy alone. It's not healthy for him to hold on to you like that, Mark added gently. You need more than boundaries, you need distance, real distance, emotional distance. Noah's hands clenched in the fabric beneath him, like he was trying to anchor himself to something solid. You need to start building a life without him, Mark said quietly. Something that's yours, something that doesn't revolve around Tate. Another pause, softer this time. Let him go, Noah. If you can't disclose your gayness and feelings, it's not fair to lie because he'll hurt you, not knowing why. And even through the pain, through the grief that still clawed at his chest, Noah understood this wasn't just advice. It was the truth he had been running from all along. I don't want to feel alone, I admitted, my voice muffled. I don't want to be left with all of it, the disappointment, the way he makes me feel powerless. You're not alone, Mark whispered, tightening his arms around me. Not while I'm here, not ever if I can help it. You can fall apart, you can cry, you can scream. I'll be right here every step, every tear. I let out a long, shaky sigh, letting my body relax fractionally into his embrace. My chest pressed against him, my hands clinging to his shirt like an anchor. The pain was still there, raw and jagged, but for the first time it didn't feel like it was going to swallow me whole. It was a shared pain now, a pain I didn't have to bear alone. And somewhere deep in the tangle of my thoughts, a fragile part of me whispered the truth I couldn't say out loud. Tate will never give me what I needed, but Mark could be enough, especially navigating the gay world. And for now, maybe that had to be enough. I closed my eyes, letting his arms wrap around me fully, letting the ache settle into a duller, more manageable thrum. I didn't have to think about the past or the impossible future. I didn't have to measure what Tate could or couldn't give. I just had to exist here in this moment, pressed against someone who was steady, present, and real. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like a place I could breathe again. I let the tears fall freely, finally, without shame. Mark held me tighter, murmuring quiet reassurances, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, a rhythm that reminded me I was still alive, still safe, still seen. For now it was enough. For now I could just be, just exist. And that thought, simple, fragile yet monumental, was enough to let me close my eyes and for the first time in what felt like forever, truly rest. I felt the tears burn my eyes again, hot and bitter. I waited for years, I choked out, my voice trembling, hopping, waiting Tate would see me differently, that maybe he'd want me in a way I needed him to. My hands curled into my lap, fingers digging into the fabric as if grounding myself could stop the ache in my chest. Mark was there, steady and unflinching, one arm around me, holding me close. "I know, kid," he murmured, voice soft but firm. "I know what you hoped for, I know how much it hurts. I loved a straight boy in Boston in 1976, but I never told him, so he hadn't a clue." His hand rubbed slowly in circular motions along my back, grounding me in a world that had suddenly felt unsafe. Queer people are family to other queer people. It's an invisible tether that helps us survive and thrive in a straight prison, Mark explained. "I'll be your family if you want." "I'd love that," I sniffle. The memory hit me again, fresh and raw. A few nights ago in the quiet of our dorm room, the shadows flickering from the bedside lamp, Tate told me that he loves my body, loves my presence, my warmth, my existence, but never wants to fuck me. My chest tightened, a mix of longing and disbelief swirling in my stomach. How could someone love something about you so completely, and yet never desire it in the way you've always imagined? I don't understand, Tate," I whispered to Mark, my voice breaking. "How can he love me and never want me? How can he lie there with me, feel me, touch me, and say that?" I buried my face in Mark's shoulder, seeking some kind of anchor. Mark tightened his hold. He's complicated, Noah, you know that, and it doesn't make it fair, but you're allowed to feel hurt. You're allowed to need more than what he can give. You're not wrong for wanting more. I pressed my face harder into Mark's chest, trying to swallow the sobs that were clawing their way up. I've waited my whole life for this, for him to look at me the way I look at him, and it's never going to happen, never. He sees my body, loves it, and yet, it's not enough, it's not what I need, it's never what I needed. "I know," Mark said quietly, almost to himself. "I know how it feels to want someone who can't give you what you need, but you're not alone, Noah. I'm here, I've always been here, and I will be." I sank lower into his embrace, shoulders slumping, feeling the weight of years collapse onto me. The ache wasn't just about desire, it was about trust, hope, and all the small dreams I'd tucked away, thinking maybe he'd see me differently someday. I just wanted him to want me," I whispered to Mark, voice barely audible, a confession to the only person who seemed to understand. "To need me the way I need him, but that's not his way, that's never going to be his way." Mark pressed a gentle kiss to my hair. "And it's okay to grieve that, it's okay to cry, you loved him and that's real, but that doesn't mean you're trapped by it. You're alive, Noah, you have people who care about you, you have me." Even as the tears streamed down, I couldn't deny the part of me that still wanted to be near him. That still longed for his presence, even knowing it would never fill the void I carried. That complexity, that mix of love, hurt, and longing, felt like a cruel tether I couldn't cut, tying me to him in ways I both cherished and despised. "And I can't hate him," I whispered, half to Mark, half to the empty room. "Not truly. He can't help it if he's the straightest, most heterosexual boy in Lowe's Angels, because he's everything I want to be close to, and even if closeness will never be enough, it's still everything." Mark held me tighter. "Then let it be enough for now," he said, voice steady and warm. "We'll get through this together, kid, you're not alone." And for the first time that night I believed him. Even if Tate could never be what I wanted, I wasn't entirely without someone who would stay. Someone who wouldn't let me fall completely apart. Someone who would hold me when the weight of loving Tate threatened to crush me. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders hunched, tracing the thin sheets with my fingers as the words replayed in my mind. "Tate," he told me, I murmured, voice low and shaky, still catching my breath from what had just happened. After we were in bed, he admitted to me, "Mark, he has many lovers, many people he fucks," and my voice cracked. I asked him if he would choose that person over me, and he basically said, "I don't matter that way to him. At least not how his lovers matter." Mark stayed silent for a moment, letting the weight of it settle over me. I could feel his gaze on me, steady, unwavering. Finally he said, "Noah, that's a lot, that's heavy. I know you were hopping, maybe even expecting that Tate would. I don't know, put you first, see you as more than this, but he's not wired that way. That doesn't mean your presence isn't everything to him, but the way he operates, the way he loves, it's not about hierarchy, it's different." I swallowed hard, shaking my head. "Different? Mark told me I don't matter, he literally said it, that I'm not chosen the way someone else is. How is that supposed to feel different? How am I supposed to? I don't even know how to be okay with that. I feel like I'm secondary, less than, invisible even when he's here with me. Mark's hand came to my shoulder, firm and grounding. Noah, I get it, I really do. You wanted more from him. You wanted acknowledgement, maybe even validation that he sees you as you see him. But Tate, he doesn't function like that. He never has. It's not about you being less, it's about how he processes relationships, how he loves. It's twisted, yes, complicated, yes, but it doesn't erase what you mean to him. You matter. Just not in a way that's easy to explain, or normal, or safe. I buried my face in my hands, crying and unsure what safe even was now. Safe isn't even a word that applies anymore. I thought we had some kind of understanding that this closeness, sleeping, being, whatever this is, it meant something, but then I find out he has others, individuals he fucks, and I'm supposed to just sit here and be okay with it. Mark leaned closer, his voice steady but gentle. Noah, you don't have to be okay with it, not ever. You're allowed to feel jealous, you're allowed to feel hurt, that's human, and it doesn't make you weak, it makes you alive. Tate's world, his rules, they don't have to define your worth, they don't have to define how you feel. You're allowed to exist outside of what he gives you. I looked up at him, eyes rimmed red, but it's not just about him giving me something, it's him taking something, him loving someone else in a way he can't with me. How do I stop thinking about it? Mark's hand lifted my chin gently, forcing me to meet his eyes. You don't stop thinking about it overnight, Noah. You don't just flip a switch, you work through it, you acknowledge it, you sit with it, and you let yourself be held when it's too much. You let people in who don't hurt you just by existing. You let me be here, I'll help. I'm not Tate, I'm not complicated in the same impossible ways he is. I'll be honest with you, I'll protect you, and I'll stay. I swallowed, a lump forming in my throat, trying to reconcile the relief and the pain twisting through me. I wanted him to choose me, I whispered. Even once, just once. Mark shook his head softly. Maybe he can't, not in the way you want him to, but that doesn't make you unworthy, Noah. It doesn't make your need invalid. It doesn't erase what you mean to him, even if he can't show it in the ways you crave. You have to understand that. You have to protect yourself, even if it means accepting that the person you love can't love you in the way you need. I leaned into him, letting him hold me, letting the sobs come unrestrained. I'm not sure I can, I admitted. You will, Mark said quietly, pressing his lips to the top of my head. Not just today, but you'll survive this. You're stronger than you think, and you're not alone, not now, not ever, not while I'm here. And for the first time that night, with my chest heaving and my mind spinning with hurt and confusion, I let myself believe it. That even if Tate's love was impossible, and even if it would never be enough for me, I still had a place where I was seen, wanted, and cared for, fully, wholly, without conditions. With Mark. Mark pulled me closer, his arms firm around my trembling body, letting me cry into his chest. He stayed silent for a moment, just letting me let it all out, the sobs, the shaking, the desperate, aching questions. Then he spoke, voice low but unwavering. Noah, listen to me very carefully, okay? Those girls or lovers or whoever Tate sleeps with, it doesn't define anything about you, none of it. It doesn't take away from who you are. It doesn't mean you're unlovable. It doesn't mean you're not worthy of love or care or respect. That's his choice, his messy, twisted world. It doesn't define you. You define yourself, and you are enough. I shook my head against his chest, voice breaking. But what does she have that I don't? Why her? Why him? Why not me? Am I unlovable? Is that why? My parents, they never loved me. Mark's grip tightened, holding me even closer, his hand stroking my back in slow, steady circles. No, none of that is your fault. Stop blaming yourself for other people's failures, okay? Your parents. People fail us all the time. They can be absent, cruel, selfish. But that says nothing about you, it says everything about them. And Tate's way of existing, his way of loving, it's complicated, impossible, and messed up. But that has nothing to do with your worth. You are lovable. You have always been lovable. You've just been waiting for someone to see it the way it is, and that's not Tate's fault, and it's not yours either. But I wanted him, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I waited for him, for years. I thought he'd see me the way I see him, and now he has someone else. He says he loves my body, but he doesn't, not like I need him to. Does that mean I'm not enough? Mark tilted my chin up so I met his eyes. Noah, being enough doesn't mean getting everything you want from someone else. Being enough means you exist and you matter and you have value, independent of who notices you or doesn't. Tate's love isn't fair, it's not healthy, it's not yours to measure against. You are enough on your own. You just haven't let yourself really see it because your heart is still focused on someone who can't give you what you need. But that doesn't make you any less worthy, not ever. I trembled, my tears soaking his shirt. I feel so small, invisible. You are not invisible, Noah, Mark said firmly, his voice strong but gentle. You are here, you are alive, you are seen, you are wanted, you are loved. And the truth is you have people in your life who will always care about you fully, not because of who you are next to, not because of what you look like, not because of anyone else. But because of you, you are enough. Even if Tate can't see it or give it, even if the world tries to tell you otherwise. You define your worth and it is infinite. I buried my face into him, feeling a strange comfort in his words. But I can't stop wanting him, I admitted quietly, the shame twisting in my chest. Mark held my face between his hands, making sure I looked at him. And you don't have to. Wanting him doesn't make you weak, it doesn't make you unworthy. It just means you're human. But you also need to remember this, Noah. You are seen, wanted, and loved by people who matter. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to fight for it. It's already yours. And that love, real, steady, human love, is what will carry you through hard times. Not Tate, not anyone else, you. And the people who truly care about you. I stayed in his arms, letting his words settle over me, feeling the ache of wanting Tate to begin to dull, replaced by the strange warmth of being seen and held for exactly who I was. For the first time I understood, my worth wasn't dependent on anyone else, not even Tate. And maybe, just maybe, I could survive the pain of wanting someone who couldn't give me what I needed. Mark whispered against my hair, calm and cert. You are lovable, Noah, and no one, not even Tate, can ever take that away from you. Mark tightened his arms around me, his voice steady and patient as he answered. No, it's not you, it's not a flaw, you haven't done anything wrong. People are complicated and love is messy. Sometimes the people we care about, the ones we want, they're not capable of giving us what we need. That doesn't mean there's anything broken in you. It means life is complicated and human beings are, humans, imperfect, sometimes cruel, sometimes selfish, but that's never a reflection of your worth. I shook my head, the tears still falling, but every time my parents, Tate, even others, no one ever. Stop, Mark said firmly but gently, cupping my face. Stop blaming yourself. You are not responsible for their choices, their failures, or their incapacity to love properly. You were never meant to carry that, and yes, it hurts, I know it does, but it's not your fault, Noah. You didn't make them incapable. You didn't make them miss what you deserved. You just happened to care about the wrong people at the wrong time. That's life. It doesn't make you flawed, it doesn't make you unlovable, and it doesn't mean your taste is bad. It means, well, it means the world isn't fair, but you are still worthy, still human, still enough. I buried my face in his chest again, trying to take it in. But why does it feel like everyone I ever loved just leaves me or doesn't want me? Mark held me tighter, because most people aren't capable of holding on to someone like you. They see pieces of you, but they can't handle the whole you, and that's their problem, not yours. The people who matter, the ones who see you fully, will never leave you, will never make you doubt your worth. Tate, he's complicated, broken, selfish in his own way, and that doesn't make you flawed. It just means your love outgrew what he could give. That's it, simple as that. I swallowed, nodding slowly, feeling the weight of years pressing down on me, and yet, Mark's words were like a shield. So, I'm not broken. You're not, he said firmly, his eyes locking with mine. You are whole, Noah, more than anyone around you has ever realized, and one day you're going to be surrounded by people who see that, who love you fully, without question. You just haven't met all of them yet. I exhaled, feeling the first thread of calm in years. Maybe he was right, maybe I wasn't unlovable, maybe the problem had never been me. Mark whispered almost tenderly, your love is a gift, Noah. It's powerful, rare, and the right people will recognize it. Don't ever think otherwise. I let the words sink in, and for a moment the ache of rejection felt lighter, like someone had finally given me permission to exist without apology. Mark's grip tightened, firm but gentle. You already have him in a way, in a space only you two occupy, but that space isn't enough for your life, it never will be. You can hold on to him as a presence, as someone who matters, but that doesn't mean you sacrifice your emotional health or your ability to connect with other people. You can't build a life around someone who can't meet you halfway emotionally. You'll be alone in a crowded room. I nodded slowly, the weight of truth settling on me. So, finding friends, real friends, it won't be betrayal. Never, Mark said firmly. It's survival, it's growth, it's making sure you're not trapped in someone else's limitations. Tate isn't bad, he just can't give you what you need. But you can still love him your way, respect him your way, and protect yourself too. That's not betrayal, that's self-preservation. I exhaled, feeling a mixture of relief and fear. Relief because there was a way forward, fear because it meant stepping out of the one space I'd felt safe for years. Okay, I'll try, I'll look for people I can actually connect with. Mark smiled gently, brushing my hair back from my face. And I'll be here every step. You're not alone in this, Noah, you never will be. For the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe I could breathe without guilt. Like maybe I could have more than the shadow of Tate's presence and still keep the part of him that mattered to me. Tate won't ever love me, will he, Mark? Mark leaned closer, voice calm but firm, letting each word land. No, kid, I don't think he ever will, and as brutal as that sounds, that might actually be the best thing he can ever do for you. Because it forces you to get out there, to find friends, to find people who can actually give you what you need. And someone who likes you back the way you like them. Someone who can meet you emotionally, who sees you fully, not just a presence to be protected or admired. I shook my head, tears spilling down my face. But I've waited so long, I thought maybe he'd feel something more, maybe it would change, maybe he'd care the way I do. Mark's hand gripped mine, steadying. I know, Noah, I know you hope that, but you've built your hopes on something he can't give. He's not capable of the kind of love you deserve, not in the way you need it. And the truth is, forcing yourself to wait on that, it only hurts you. You'll waste years on someone who'll never be able to meet your needs, and you'll miss the people who actually could. I choked on a sob. So, you're saying I need to let him go? Mark nodded slowly. I'm saying you need to hold him as he is without expecting more and start living your own life fully. Make real connections, let people in, let yourself be seen. It's terrifying, I know, but you're stronger than you realize. And this will be the first step to finding someone who loves you back in the way you deserve. Not because they're obligated, not because they admire you from a distance, but because they actually want you. I buried my face in my hands, letting his words sink in. For the first time, I realized that holding onto Tate wasn't protecting me, it was keeping me from living. And maybe Tate never loving me back and instead pushing me towards Mark was the cruelest act of kindness Tate had ever unknowingly given me. Mark leaned back, his eyes steady on mine, voice patient but firm. Noah, if you choose to take him back, whatever he wants to give you and whatever is healthy for you to accept, you need to nail down the rules of your relationship. And I mean really nail them down. Mark's voice softened slightly but remained firm. Maybe it's not good for you to be around him, but that's up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you do need a support group outside of Tate. Girls, guys, I don't care. You need people in your life who can meet some of your emotional needs, where someone actually sees you, hears you, and validates you without any strings attached, and individuals that you can talk to about things you hide from Tate. I looked down, thinking about how alone I'd been, how I'd relied on Tate for so much emotional grounding, even though it was twisted. I stared at Mark, my chest tight, my mind a jumble. His words cut through the fog I didn't even realize I'd been living in. Tate's shadow, living under it. I'd always known it in the back of my head, but hearing it aloud made it real, uncomfortably real. I don't even know where to start, I muttered, almost to myself. I mean, how do you even find somebody like that, someone who meets you halfway? Mark's eyes softened, but the intensity stayed. You don't start by looking for perfection, Noah. You start by recognizing what isn't healthy and you refuse to settle for it again. You notice the red flags, the patterns, the ways someone makes you small or afraid, and then you let yourself feel, really feel without hiding. That's when you know it's halfway. I swallowed hard. Halfway. I'd been giving everything but never getting it back, not really. Not with Tate, not with anyone. The truth felt heavy, like water pressing down in my chest. I guess I never realized, I admitted quietly. I thought what I had was enough or something special. I'm stupid. Mark leaned back, letting the silence stretch, giving me space to let it sink in. It isn't, he said finally. Not when you're afraid to be honest. Not when you're constantly bending to fit someone else's world. You deserve someone who sees you, really sees you, and stays anyway. That's the kind of connection that teaches you what love actually feels like. I looked down at my hands, fingers curled, remembering every secret I'd kept, every compromise I'd made to avoid conflict, to avoid losing Tate, every lie I'd swallowed to keep the peace. It all felt suddenly small and meaningless, and yet terrifying, because stepping out of Tate's shadow meant facing the world on my own, facing myself on my own. I exhaled shakily, letting his words sink in. The idea of building something outside of Tate felt foreign and terrifying, but for the first time I realized it might be the only way I could breathe freely again. Across town, Tate didn't get a single wink of sleep that night. Noah hadn't returned home, which in a quiet, cold way wasn't surprising. He hadn't seen the right kind of upset earlier that might have drawn Noah back in a few hours. Tate tried to convince himself he was overthinking, that Noah would call, that maybe he'd check in to let him know he was okay, but he knew deep down that Noah wasn't calling. He was with Mark, and Tate knew it with absolute certainty. He replayed it in his mind, every second of Noah storming out of their dorm room, the betrayal, the hurt, and the way Noah had buried his face in Mark's chest. That memory burned sharper than anything else. Tate didn't understand why he had freaked out over Mark's dinner in the first place. It wasn't about Mark. It wasn't about Noah being with someone else who was a mere friend. It wasn't even about the girl Tate brought back to the dorm. It was about himself. Tate's own reaction to Mark had been impulsive, childish, jealous, vindictive, and a rebounding tantrum. Tate fucking Tina was like a toddler throwing a raving, screaming tantrum at his metaphorical truck, who dared to spend time with another truck that Tate hated. He knew that if he had thought for a few more hours, if he had remembered the rules they had set for each other, he never would have done it. Now the guilt gnawed at him with relentless precision. He felt bad, no, worse than bad. He felt horrible that Noah had seen that side of him, that his anger, unfiltered and raw, had humiliated Noah in front of Mark. Noah, who had only ever sought safety and calm and care in his presence, had been forced to witness him as a vindictive, petulant child marking his territory. Tate's chest tightened with a weight that sleep could not lift. He knew Noah had been embarrassed, he knew Noah had been hurt, and he knew terrifyingly that this might change something between them, even though he desperately hoped it wouldn't. Tate ran his hands through his hair, staring at the ceiling, replaying every nuance of Noah's expression. The hurt, the shock, the disbelief. His mind churned in relentless circles. I didn't mean to fuck, I didn't mean to punish him, I didn't mean to act like that, but the truth was he had meant to act like that, and the shame of it burned hotter than any anger he'd ever felt. He tried to lie to himself that it was temporary, that Noah wouldn't dwell on it, that Mark would soothe him. But deep down, Tate knew better. He knew Noah had felt that sting of humiliation, and Tate's inability to fully explain himself or even apologize without exposing too much made the guilt twist even tighter. And so, he lay awake all night, staring at the dark ceiling, haunted not by the thought of what Noah was doing across town, but by the truth of what Tate had become in front of Noah. A man who couldn't control his impulses, a man who had scared and embarrassed the only person whose presence mattered in his life. He thought about the rules, about Noah's boundaries, about everything he had preached and held up as sacred between them. He hated himself for breaking them, and he loathed himself even more for the thought that maybe, just maybe, he had broken Noah too, or their relationship. The night stretched endlessly, each hour heavier than the last, with only the memory of Noah's hurt face to keep him awake, and the gnawing certainty that no apology could ever fully erase it. Tate's chest felt like it would cave in as the truth clawed its way into his thoughts. He wasn't afraid of losing Noah in some abstract sense. He wasn't scared that Mark or anyone else could claim him. No, what terrified Tate was far more visceral, far more immediate. The idea that Noah might prioritize someone else, that he might take his body, his presence, his proximity somewhere else. That thought alone made his blood run hot and cold at the same time. Tate's jealousy wasn't just petty, childish, selfish, or fleeting. It was a violent, irrational tornado that tore through his mind and forced Tate to behave in ways that were inappropriate or downright cruel to Noah. Every inch of his being screamed against the idea of anyone else touching Noah, sharing even the slightest intimacy that Tate had guarded for decades. It wasn't lust. It wasn't desire in the conventional sense. It was territorial, primal, protective to the point of obsession. That evening when Noah hadn't been available, he had dared to be busy, to exist outside the orbit Tate had imagined. Tate's control unraveled. He acted like a child, vindictive and cruel, but the cruelty wasn't about Noah. It was about the fear, the raw panic of Noah existing somewhere else, in someone else's space, even for a fleeting moment. That absence, that tiny gap in proximity, had terrified him utterly. Tate knew he couldn't articulate it, not to anyone, not to Noah. He couldn't explain that the tantrum, the jealous outburst, the cold rage he'd wielded like a weapon had been about their relationship's survival, the survival of a bond that couldn't be explained, that couldn't be shared, that had nothing to do with romance or sex. All it had ever been about was Noah being there, his body near, his presence intact, unclaimed by anyone else. And the thought that Noah had dared to exist outside that invisible boundary, even for a moment, left Tate hollowed, jealous, and furious in equal measure. Tate paced the length of his door, the city lights bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows like shards of judgment. He couldn't sit. He couldn't think in calm lines. Every heartbeat reminded him that Noah had been somewhere else, that Noah's body, his body, had been in someone else's orbit, breathing, existing, alive, and not with him. It was irrational, violent, obsessive, and Tate didn't care. He couldn't care. He remembered the way Noah had run into Mark's arms, burying his face, sobbing, letting someone else hold him. Every inch of that scene replayed in Tate's mind, slow and merciless, like a film stripped of mercy. He could see it, Noah trembling, trusting, exposed, available. And Tate had been powerless to stop it. That helplessness gnawed at him deeper than any fear of loss, deeper than the fear of death. Tate remembered how Noah had run to Tate for comfort for years due to bullies, cruel teachers, and painful childhood events that had hurt Noah. Tate hated that a rich man like Mark was the person Noah ran to for comfort now, instead of Tate, who loved the blonde. His jealousy had never been about sex. It never would be. It was about proximity, about keeping Noah's body and presence where it had always been, safe, predictable, and tethered. Every time Noah laughed with someone else, smiled with someone else, or allowed himself to lean into another's chest, Tate's stomach twisted with a fear that was equal parts envy and desperation. He couldn't explain it, he couldn't name it, he only knew it burned. And yet in the same twisted breath he knew he had created this. Noah taught him, through years of proximity, silent rules, and unspoken boundaries, that Tate's world was the only safe space, that Noah could lean, rest, exist, and be protected, but only in his sphere. That trust, that security, had been both a gift and a cage. Tate sank into the leather couch, pressing his face into his hands. He hated himself for how childish, how vicious he had been tonight. He hated that his fear had forced him into a tantrum, into punishment, into cruelty. But most of all, he hated that it wasn't fear of losing Noah to life, or even to Mark. It was the fear of losing the way Noah existed next to him, the way Noah's body had always been his to be near, untouched in intimacy, without sex, without claim. Noah hadn't done anything wrong, he never had, and that made it worse. Tate's jealousy wasn't fair, wasn't rational, and would never be excusable. But it was true, and it was visceral, and it was terrifying in a way that made sleep impossible. He couldn't unfeel it, he couldn't unlove it, he could only wait, packing, burning, knowing that the moment Noah stepped even a fraction away from the world Tate had built for him, chaos would follow, and all he could do was watch helplessly and obsessively. Tate hated that he needed it, that he needed Noah to stay exactly as he was, body, presence, everything, without wanting more, without desiring more, without ever questioning the rules of this impossible, unspoken arrangement. And yet, the thought of anyone else, of any moment where Noah existed outside this carefully constructed orbit, sent a shiver of panic straight through his core. Tate's eyes burned, fixed on the city below, but he saw nothing but the terror of Noah ever choosing differently. If Noah ever prioritized someone else, all the care, the silent years of closeness and tethering would unravel, leaving Tate hollow, desperate, and utterly unmoored. Tate sat on the edge of the couch, fingers gripping the leather like he could hold himself together that way. His stomach churned, acid biting, a bitter reminder of the jealousy that had ripped through him earlier, the way it had made him physically sick. He could still feel the memory of vomit, of the sharp, involuntary gag right after the girl had left and Noah had stormed out. It wasn't just anger, not just frustration. It was something darker, sharper, a primal panic that Noah could be anywhere else, be taken, be pulled out of Tate's orbit, and he couldn't bear it. Noah had always had this habit, this relentless tendency to fixate, to obsess over whomever or whatever captured his attention. Tate had known it from the beginning, from the first moment he had held 4-year-old Noah in his arms. The way Noah's eyes could light up for a single person and suddenly the rest of the world didn't exist. Tate had learned to accept it, or at least he thought he had, because for all his obsession he knew he was Noah's constant. He had been for 14 years. But every time Noah's attention strayed, every time someone else claimed even a fragment of Noah's focus, it was a knife to Tate's chest. Noah running out crying, Tina leaving Tate's dorm, Mark holding Noah through tears. Mark, it had been a perfect storm. Tate's stomach turned just thinking about it. It wasn't rational, he knew that. Mark hadn't done anything wrong. Noah hadn't done anything wrong. And yet the jealousy had clawed at him, a wildfire in his chest, leaving him nauseous, desperate, shaking. He had wanted to grab Mark, squeeze him until he understood that Noah was his, that nothing, nobody could touch what Tate had. But he couldn't, not really. He couldn't admit it to Noah. He couldn't explain that the sickness, the panic, the suffocating need to keep Noah near after dark was jealousy. He couldn't risk Noah misinterpreting it, wanting something Tate couldn't give, or worse, thinking Tate's obsession was something sexual. He wasn't jealous in that way. He didn't want Noah sexually. He wanted Noah present, untouchable, untangled from the world. Safe in the orbit Tate had built around him. Every time Noah smiled at someone else, leaned on someone else, let someone else into his life, it tore at Tate in ways that made him violent in thought if not in action. Mark holding Noah, even just for comfort, had been unbearable. If Tate had gotten his hands on him, he would have squeezed Mark's throat, not to hurt, to punish, but to reclaim Noah, to tether him back to the only space that mattered. The small, quiet dorm room, the world where Noah existed only in proximity to him, an extension of Tate which Noah was done paralleling. Tate hated himself for it. He hated the jealousy that made him sick, the fear that Noah's heart and attention could ever leave him, but he couldn't stop it. It was as visceral as breathing, as unrelenting as the pulse in his veins. And deep down he knew he'd always feel this way, jealous, desperate, and utterly dependent on Noah's presence to keep the world from falling apart. In Mark's hotel room, Noah thought about what he had done in losing his virginity with an older man. Noah needed an older man's touch from someone he trusted.